Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be back here. It's already been a week since last Wednesday, so it's a pleasure to be here back in Kardec Radio. Tonight, we are also streaming on Love and Charity Spirit Center here in Orlando, Florida, where I am. So I'm very happy to be once again with you. Remember last week we talked about God. We went to the very first question of the Spirit's book, right? What is God? And in the end, towards the end, um, I invited everybody to meditate on what is God to you, right? What it is meant in your heart. What is the God of your heart, of your understanding, of what supports you throughout life? And I got one of the answers from one of the viewers. They sent the following, and I said, ouch. It says, why embarking in the path of spirituality? What is the point of finding God anyway? So, fair point, right? Um, but the fact alone that you are asking that question means you are already in the path, right? The fact alone that we start asking these kind of philosophical questions, what is the purpose of us being here anyway? It shows that you are already in the path, wanting or not, liking it or not. We are all gonna be there or have been there or is there. Why? The Spirit's book has a nice concept in the law of worship. It's one of the natural laws and divine laws. So if you go to question 652, it says, does worship have its source in natural law? And the answer of the Spirit is, worship is part of the natural law because it's the result of an innate human feeling. This explains why worship is found in different forms throughout the world. So, independently of what your culture is, um, we all have this feeling innate in us, this need to find God. And maybe not awake right now for you, and it's okay, right? But we are all going to embark in this journey, wanting or not, sooner or later, for different reasons, in this incarnation or maybe in the next 10 ones. Because when you ask, what is the point of finding God? My question is, what is the point of not, right? What is the point of not to finding God? What is the point of living this life and not seeking a more real purpose of existence? And there is a great modern scientist, sociologist called Jonathan Haidt. If you can go to the TED Talks. He has great TED Talks. And he has one particularly about this need, this innate need. So he agrees with the Spiritism in that sense when he says that human beings are like homo duplex, that's how he calls, because we all have the need for transcendence. So this is what the Spirit's book is trying to tell us. It's innate. We see in every culture. We see in all the times, during any time of our civilization, this need to transcend our lives, right? Our material life. So the materialistic point of view is respected, of course. But sooner or later, and I think for you that ask that, sooner than you think, because you are already thinking about it, you are already questioning what is the purpose of even embarking in it. That's already a start. We can't escape, it's innate. Whoops. But that brought me thinking what we could talk about it today. And I thought about it's a very religious term, but it brought me to one of the tenets of the Spiritist doctrine. It says, without charity, there is no salvation. Without charity, there is no salvation. And it brought me back then. Why try to find in God anyway? Why this need that we have to find salvation? And uh, we need to start by the definitions of charity and of salvation, right? So I'm going to borrow from this is a dictionary that I use, Holman Illustrated Bible Dictionary. This dictionary I use for my gospel studies, and it's very helpful. And I went after this term salvation, because after all, it's such a basic tenet from our doctrine, right? It's saying without charity, there is no salvation, there is no freedom, there is no enlightenment, there is no possibility of awakening. So let's see what salvation means, since it's such a religious term, right? So let's go to the Bible dictionary. And it says salvation. I'm going to, of course, just read a few. One of the key concepts of God's revelation to humanity. The biblical idea of salvation involves three notions. First is the rescue from danger, harm, or even death of an individual, group, or nation. Most specifically, salvation is the rescue from sin and death. So, salvation is the rescue of from sin and death. And then I keep thinking, right? Well, as a spiritist, we don't believe in death as commonly use the word, right? Death for us is just a change of clothes, right? We are going from one state of consciousness to another. We are going to get rid of the physical body, and we are going to, in our consciousness, will survive the physical death. So it's just a change of clothes, but our consciousness will survive. Therefore, and of course, we also believe in reincarnation in many, many, many lives in order for us to be able to save ourselves. So, salvation from sin and death. What is sin? Another very religious, heavy term where we associate sin and we as sinners with a very negative context, right? But if you go to the etymology of the word sin, sin is just a term that means missing the mark. If you are if you are trying to hit the bullseye and you miss that bullseye, you miss the mark, you are sinning. So in a more relaxed way, sin is just to make a mistake. It's just an error. And we are all going to commit errors. We are all going to commit mistakes. So salvation from sin and death would not be enough for us. So when you keep going the definition of the dictionary, you are going to find scripture explains that humanity fell from the original condition of moral purity into the state of sin. And then comes God's salvation to renew the spirit of a person to lead a life that's morally pleasing to Him. So it's the restoration of this relationship with God. That's more like what Spiritism is going to bring us, this reconnection with the divine, this reconnection with God, this reconnection with the sacred. Um, so, this renewing of the spirit is the part of salvation that interests us and aligns itself with the definition that Kardec comes up with. There is no salvation without charity. So, theologically speaking, salvation can be reached to escape sin and death, can be reached by faith or by deeds. And Kardec comes with the third option, by charity. So, our brothers Protestants believe that faith saves us. Our Catholic brothers believe that's more from your deeds. So you do good deeds, you reach salvation. And the Spiritism says that without charity, there is no salvation. So, in order to reach this kind of freedom, we have to exercise charity. I'm going to bring a text from Deepak Chopra that relates to that, right? Freedom is all encompassing. It brings you into God's presence by releasing you from the illusion that you live behind walls. That goes a lot with Spiritism because we don't believe in death. We are not afraid. We are not fearful that we are either going to heaven or hell. These concepts for us are a little different, and we are going to do a program about heaven and hell a little further. But if we don't believe in the death as the end of our consciousness, if we don't believe that in the materialistic point of view either, where when we die it's all gone and done, right? There is the reason to search for a salvation in our process of living. So Deepak Chopra keeps going in the chapter that says, that's from the book The Third Jesus by Deepak Chopra. And he says, where the soul never dies, it's in that chapter. And he's talking about what it will it feel like to finally arrive in this God consciousness, right? Again, trying to understand what's the need of finding God. Because again, the viewer had a point when he says, what is the point of finding God and going through intellectual definitions if we are not going to have a result or a meaning in our lives while incarnated? And Deepak says, what do we feel? How is it? How do we know that we found this awakening state, this enlightenment? How do we know that we found God? And he says, when God consciousness dawns, a complex of a series of changes occurs. Let's see some of them. There is no longer a battle between good and evil. So we understand that when we make mistakes, when we sin, when we miss the mark, it's out of ignorance of the laws. It's because we don't know better. If we know better intellectually, we still don't know better in our hearts. Because when we do know better, we just change. It's a natural occurrence, right? We see the mistake and we go, no, I won't do that again, right? And it's easier and it's more compassionate when you see your brother. You don't see them as evil or bad, you know. It's this line starts getting blurry, and we start accepting the good and evil that we have in ourselves, within us. Fear is revealed as an illusion. the fear of this physical world, right? The fear of death, the fear of sin. You identify with God. Your thoughts and desires have a divine source, a higher purpose. You feel that the world is yours as co creator with God. And in this present moment, we are able to co create with God. That's why we are this intelligent principle of the universe. That's why we are the work of art of creation, because we are able to think of ourselves and co create in this beautiful work of God. The world out there responds immediately to the world in here. In other words, outward reality mirrors the self. Love is realized as the supreme force in the universe. Like we talked about in the last program, God in the end uh, of the world is love is God, right? Love is God. God is love. It's all in the same. It's the source, it's the origin, it's the first cause of all things. And then we go back to the definition of Spiritism for salvation. How do I free myself? How do I reach enlightenment? How do I save myself? Save from what? Save from our own crazy thoughts of fear, of our own crazy thoughts of limitation. So let's see what in the Gospel according to Spiritism, another one of the five main books of our doctrine. In chapter 15, you're going to find the instructions from the spirits, and it's a beautiful text where Kardec explains why without charity there is no salvation. So before we get into that, we need to go through another um, explanation or another definition for us to understand this sentence. What is charity? Commonly, we think charity is to giving money, right? Giving alms. If we give financial resources or material resources, we are being charitable. This is only one side of charity according to Spiritism. Charity for Spiritists are trifecta. And we find exactly the definition of charity because it's fundamental. After all, without it, there is no hope for us. In the Spirit's book again. So I hope you have your Spirit's book with you because we keep going back to it, right? And we are going to find that in question 886. That's so important for us. 886. Let me see, where is it? What is the true meaning of the word charity as used by Jesus? Question 886 of the Spirit's book. And the answer of the Spirits is so profound. Benevolence for everyone, indulgence towards the imperfection of others, and forgiveness of offenses. So we need to conquer three things only in life in order to be saved: benevolence for everyone, indulgence towards the imperfections of others, meaning acceptance, and forgiveness of offenses. So we need to conquer within us these three um, pillars of the definition of charity. So it's not only material charity that Spiritism is talking about. Let's see benevolence towards others. Thomas Merton, he's a writer who wrote No Man is an Island. He has a beautiful description. He says, in the economy of divine charity, we have only as much as we give. Did it sink in? In the economy of divine charity, we have only as much as we give. So, um, giving and receiving are part of the same thing. You can't separate. And when you are giving, and to be a giving person, a benevolent person, it's not only to help others with material stuff or money, or it's to give of yourself. It's to give the best that you have. It's a smile. It's a word of compassion when somebody's in need. There are so many ways constantly in our everyday life that we exercise this giving. And by giving, we learn to receive. And as we give, we feel the happiness that means to be there for one another. So benevolence means compassion. Benevolence means giving and receiving as one, um, one thing, one together, right? I can't give without receiving. If I am lacking return, it's not real giving. If I need to be paid back, it's not really giving. It's not really charity. We don't think of what's going to come back to us. The act itself, the feeling itself, the moment itself creates already the result within me, within my soul. I feel it, right? So that's number one, benevolence. And on top of everything, in question 642, the Spirit's book um, even goes further. It says it's not enough not to do evil. It's not enough not to do bad stuff. We have to go further. We have to proactively do good. That's why we are here, to help one another, to proactively do good, right? So that's the first item for us to be saved, to be freed, to be happy, to be enlightened, to be awakened. Benevolence. Item number two, acceptance, tolerance of others, respect. There are so many things that we could uh, um, explain, right, as what is this tolerance? Because tolerance is a beautiful word that has lost this intrinsic meaning, right? We talk about tolerance, it's like, oh my God, okay, I'm going to tolerate, I'm going to hang in. And it's not that. It's acceptance of others, non judgmental behavior towards other people, right? So accepting everybody. We all are here in this journey and we have to understand one another. And by accepting, by tolerating, by understanding that we all have a history and we all have our reasons, and we should only love one another, not being judging others, right? And the third um, principle is forgiveness. Without forgiveness, there is no way we can free our souls towards enlightenment. Why? Because we carry weight. We carry all these bad feelings towards situations that were in the past. And you know what? The past does not carry creative urge. We cannot create in the past. We can only co create in the present moment. So when we are living in the past, we are not able to free ourselves to create a new horizon. We are only going over and over painful situations and experiences. And even worse, we are blaming others for our own experiences. And I'm not saying that there are no reasons to feel that way. We do feel that way when we get hurt or when somebody really hurts us. Of course, we are going to feel hurt. And but a better question, instead of putting the blame on somebody else, is to ask ourselves what is in there for us to learn from the experience and not reliving the past, reliving the bad pain. The brain doesn't know when you are thinking about something in the past that it's already gone. The brain reads like it's happening now. That's why we feel, even physically, everything happening, right? We feel the pain all over again. So we are just hurting ourselves all over again. And there are so many exercises, so many prayers, so many meditations we can do to learn how to forgive. And when we forgive others, we are able to learn how to forgive ourselves, which is the maximum goal, right? If we don't have compassion for ourselves and learn how to forgive our past mistakes and all the things that went really wrong, we are not going to be able to release and let it go of things that are still tying us to the past. So, without charity, there is no salvation. Without benevolence towards everybody, without acceptance and tolerance of others, and without being able to forgive offenses that were done towards us, we are not going to be able to really reconnect and find God's arms around us. And that's the exercise, and that's why it's a journey, and that's why we enter this path, because we want to be happier. That's simple. We want to be free. We want to be more loving and more compassionate. So, our salvation is in charity. And charity is benevolence, acceptance, and forgiveness. I hope these concepts have become a little bit more clear, and we will obviously keep talking about these principles as they are so centered in the Spiritism doctrine, right? So we'll keep coming back to it. But I thought it was important for us to address that. And before we leave, I want to leave you with a thought of Leon Denis. Leon Denis is a Spiritist writer um, that many consider the successor of Allan Kardec, and he writes beautifully. And I'm going to leave you with this. We shall truly live in others, rejoicing in their happiness and lamenting with their grief. Then will there be no complaint without echo, no sorrow without consolation. Then the mighty human family, peaceful, united, and confident, will advance at a swifter pace to overtake its glorious destiny. I love Leon Denis. It's so beautiful, everything he writes, and it brings us these concepts and speaks to our hearts directly. So I hope you like this today, and keep sending questions, keep commenting, and I'll see you next Wednesday. And if you want to make some suggestions for what our third program should be, I will welcome any suggestion. Okay. So stay in God, stay in peace. Without charity, there is no salvation. Bye bye.